we are going to have all out World War III on our hands in Wolf Game. The one thing they all want, all of them want peak credits. All of them want energy. They're all going to be breeding. They're going to be sabotaging one another to try to hurt the other one's breeding progress, but they're all going to breed and they're all going to need chops. I believe a strong way to give yourself optionality and to kind of protect yourself against that is to breed. When the peak credits dry up and there is a deficit, they're going to be coming for your barns. They're going to be breeding wolves. They're going to want chops. That's where the game, I think, is going to really start to pick up on the farm.
Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Digital Optimyst, back with Beyond the Den. As we navigate the captivating world of Wolf Game, we've got an exciting surprise today. A part 2 with Farmer Piddy. From peak games to peak credits, and even some speculation about a Wolf Game World War III. We are turning up the heat. So buckle up and let's explore this wild universe together.
What is up, dude?
Dude, I am so pumped. Just being part of the beta testing, it was a really cool experience. Maybe we have some more beta tests. I'm not sure, what to expect yet, but I will just say what we experienced this weekend has me I could not be more woolish, as we like to say, with kind of seeing overall, at a really high level, what Shep designed. It's kind of like, I feel like at least I had a light bulb moment, and I think a lot of people in the community also had light bulb moments. But also, I don't like to just sit there in that light bulb moment and be like, okay, that's great and all. I want to take that and say, okay, how does that affect my game? What do I need to do to position myself? But I don't know. So that I have a lot of thoughts around, now let's dive into game strategy and whatnot. The peak game, the way it completes the loop is absolutely blowing my mind. So we kind of launch these peak games and we go into it and it's like, okay, you wager wool to win wool against another player and it requires some peak credits. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, where's it's basically there's no wool rewards that's coming from the farm. It's like, where is that wool? And then it hit me, oh yeah, dumbass, there's a leaderboard and the leaderboard is going to have tons of wool, right? The other thing that kind of surprised us was there wasn't pouch rewards for playing these mini games. So it's like, well, where are all the pouches? Because we know that pouches is an important part of the game concept. So one idea would be that this leaderboard has pouched wool, and I don't know, maybe the top 100 spots pay out. Maybe it's the top 500 spots, right? But basically, the way this is playing out is I think Shep is designing the leaderboard where you don't have to be actually profitable on these mini games to climb the rankings. Yes, you need to win, and that's how it's going to show you how much wool you won, but it's not going to subtract the losses off of that. Okay, and that's a really important distinction, because what it means is basically the more you spend and the more you play, if you're breaking even, or even if you're operating at a small loss, you can climb those rankings because you're winning 5,000 wool here. Yeah, you might lose 5,000 wool on this next one, but you might win the one after that. So at that point, if you're doing the math, you've got 10,000 wool that you've won, right? And maybe that's how he's determining the rankings on the leaderboard. Where we're going with this, it is Shep has created this flywheel effect where the more you spend and the more you play peak, the higher you're going to climb on the rankings. As long as when you win a game, it's going to bump up your balance. But when you lose, it's probably not going to make you dip, if that makes sense.
So it really favors somebody who's pretty skillful at these games too, right?
Yeah. Well, the cool thing is, okay, so think about it this way. Al Steezy, wow.
Smizzle.
Al Smizzle. I shouldn't have said that. Al Smizzle in Discord yesterday.
A mix of both of them.
Yeah, I'm just messing it all up.
That'd be a very intense character.
Yeah, I don't know if I would be willing to interact with that character, or I don't know if I'd want to be want them on my side, or if I just want to fly under the radar, So anyway, he was basically saying on DraftKings, 80%, it's 80 or 85% of the people that play lose. Okay. Now, the cool thing about where the peak is going, this is really unique. We're going to have players that spend wool like there's no tomorrow, and they're going to climb the rankings on the leaderboard, and they're going to come out at the end with a huge loss. Like, but they're going to have a grand old time doing it. You know what I mean? I think the direction that the game is going is there's going to be degenerates that are playing this thing because they love, like, there's 0.25 ETH of wool on the line. Are you kidding me? The rush of that in these little mini games, your heart is pounding, like you are deploying your sheep. This thing can go crazy. But then you've also got some of the smarter players that have a lot of strategic experience in games like this, and they are going to not only climb the leaderboard, but they're going to make wool on these mini games while they're doing it. And those guys are going to absolutely kill it. So where the game is going, like if you think about it this way, these whales, if you remember back to the original Alpha game was super boring. It started off kind of fun and everyone was excited, but after it went on for a really long time, it got really boring. And that's because Alpha game is basically at a really high level. It's the high level framework for this entire game. Okay, so it seemed really simple because all you could do is like fortify, and then like, sheep are like switching their alliances, and you got to like get more, sheep staked to your alliance and stuff like that.
It seems like it was only intense for the alphas.
Right? Yeah. And even then it's like, even you could tell like they were kind of tired of it.
Sure.
But when you take that framework, now you've got like the whole Corey Panther rivalry and the drama that was happening, all of that. That's great stuff. Now give them resources, give them an entire fucking economy where they can go and, like, Corey's got control of the stone. Okay. Seed Phrase has control of water. Steezy, he's got like all the chops. So these guys are going to be using their resources. They're going to be using the farm, and they're going to be playing the game out there. And they're going to be trying to get as much energy. They're going to breed as much as they can. They need peak credits because they're going to be spending all of their peak credits trying to climb this leaderboard. Like, that's exactly where the game is going. Couldn't be more pumped. And the cool thing is, you don't have to be a whale to win at this game, right? Like, all you have to do is get a picture of where this game is heading and start breeding, right? So like, there's a huge connection between peak as we know it and these peak credits, which leads us, into the breeding side of things. So, if you take like, there's a theory going around, or not a theory, I'll say this. A lot of people are kind of thinking that like, oh, peak credits are plentiful. We have like, peak credits are toilet paper because these wolves are printing so many peak credits every time they charge. That is not going to be the case always. And the really important reason is the peak and the way Shep designed this game loop. He's using the peak to incentivize breeding. If we're always just going to be having peak credits out to wazoo, we don't need to breed. Okay, the breeding pressure is going to kick in once the peak credits start getting used up and we start running out and they're trying to climb the leaderboard. That's what's going to put them into the pressure to do the breeding. So
when do you foresee that happening?
That's a great question. What I think we need more information on is, okay, is peak seasonal? So like, maybe it resets every month, and every month is a new peak game with a new payout. And as spending on the farm increases, the payouts increase each month. Maybe it's something like that. But I do anticipate, just like Alpha game had an ending where things kind of got a little crazy towards the ending, you're going to see peak games have tournaments or endings for seasons where basically these guys know the game schedule. They know there's 4 games left or 5 games left, and they are playing out to the max on the top of the peak, and they are just flinging 50,000 wool around like it's nothing. And if they know that the time is running out, that's when, dude, if you got peak credits and you got a fucking whale that wants your peak credits so he can climb the leaderboard, and you're one of the ones that has a few left, because they're just not charging enough, like that's a great spot to be in. I'm not saying there's only going to be 10 peak credits left right at the end of this. I'm just saying the farm and the peak, they can only put out so much energy. The energy in the game is capped by the recharging speeds. So when the demand for the peak credits surpasses the recharging speed, that's when we're going to start to see a deficit in these peak credits. And if you save your peak credits for the right time and you don't want to play the game, you just want to like trade those, there might be some opportunities where peak credits are worth 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe even like 10 times as much wool as they currently are.
Hmm. Where do you think they are now? Do you think they're reasonably priced?
I think they're around like two. The last time I heard on the feral flips, they had them. I know it was trading around 3, and I think it's gone down a little bit. But like I said, it's all supply and demand. We don't have enough demand for the peak credits yet because we're only doing the beta testing. But once Shep releases the full peak and we're flying through games and everyone's climbing the leaderboard, I expect peak credits to be used a lot. I honestly don't think that there may be even a situation where like Corey, he's just absolutely stacked with peak credits. He's going to come to the option of saying, okay, I can either use these peak credits, I can play more and climb the leaderboard, or I can sell them. I'm not convinced he's going to sell them. Like everyone's assuming that everyone's just going to be selling these peak credits. And I think that might be just complete, nonsense. Like it may be that these guys absolutely value their peak credits more than anything because they can keep climbing up the leaderboard with them. So I don't know from like a timing and stuff like that. But if it really depends on kind of the cycle that Shep creates, however he's designing the peak, that's going to determine how fast these market cycles are with these peak credits. And that's really what's going to kind of determine the overall supply and demand curves for where we're at in the game.
Love that. And look at esports, right? You look at the viewership that esports brings in, and the amount of side bets that go on at these contests. Think about some of these bigger whales who have a crazy amount of peak credits and wool battling each other. I think that could be very interesting. And then also the ability to do those side bets within the community, I think is really going to start bringing more eyes onto Wolf Game, purely from a excitement standpoint, especially during this bear when everything else seems to be falling apart. Wolf Game is rising. We just need to get more eyes on Wolf Game, and it seems like not a lot of people care about it. They're all very focused on their own bags, or they still think Wolf Game might even be a rug. They just don't. It's super frustrating, but all we could do is continue to keep creating content, pushing stuff out there. I saw that you recently tweeted that one of your missions is to create some really amazing onboarding content, which is awesome. I'm currently reaching out to large community members to create more of that content. So instead of fudding your own bags, make yourself useful and start thinking, what can I do to elevate this Wolf Game and the community? That's what it comes down to.
No, 100%.
Yeah. So going into some of the games, right? What do you think about? There's been some chatter about bots being created for these games. Do you even think that is a possibility?
I think that argument was inevitably going to come up. So I'm not surprised by hearing that. Like someone's going to scream that, a bot or whatever is going to change it based on what I'm not a bot expert. I understand a little bit about how they work. And I know that they can kind of like ruin the fun sometimes. But I would say this, Shep and the team they've poured so much time and so many resources into building this product. They have an answer. If bots would be a problem, they have an answer for it. Right.
Interesting.
They are not going to position themselves in life into a situation where they pour all of this time and energy and then get to the end of it and being like, oh, well, shit, we forgot about the bots. Like the bots, that's what killed it. Like it's just not how smart people work. And Shep is an insanely smart person and team, and they will, if it's a problem, they'll be able to figure it out. But personally, as a player, like I don't care, and I'm not worried about that. Worrying about a bot doesn't really position me well in the game. It doesn't help me go further. That's not my job to worry about that. That's why we have a damn team, and the damn team will take care of the bots if that's an issue.
Yeah, I like that attitude, man. Because then you're just in the weeds.
Yeah,
Everything is crumbling at that point.
yeah.
Let's talk about. I think we'll have an opportunity to onboard some professional gamers into the mix. You look at some big brained individuals that are hex players. I just think that
That's a good point.
it's because for me, if I was playing against somebody halfway decent at hex, I would most likely lose. It's just not one of my strong points. Do I put this dot here? Yeah, this looks good over here. I'd probably lose within 14 seconds. So it's like stealing candy from a baby. So yeah, I definitely want to challenge some big brain gamers out there, some strategists, to try some of these games out. And if you are looking for peak credits and wool, I know a bunch of us would be willing to pony that up for you to try that. So, what are your thoughts? Like, what was your favorite game that you played over the weekend, and how did you feel about them?
So my favorite one was Tug of Wool, and I'll just be honest with you. Like, I'm not going to be good at these games. I'm not going to be good at the games.
Can I interject here? Sorry.
Sure.
You're one that likes to take data, submerge it, analyze it, and then come out. Would I get that right? Like, that's kind of how I am too. Spur the moment, it gets me super anxious, dude.
Yeah, my heart's pounding just thinking of it.
I was just like 43, 52, just like it was a nightmare. I think I lost within 15 seconds. It was a joke. It's like, what happened?
So Tug of Wool, like, okay, here's why I enjoyed it. First of all, I won. Like, that was the one that I had a victory. But I opted in for the 8 a.m. beta, and I didn't get placed. So they reimbursed anybody that didn't get placed with the wool and the peak credits, and they scheduled a new game for 10 a.m. So I had 2 hours to like kind of sit there and think about the strategy. So I happened to watch Term's match that he did. And when Term played, he started with 1 sheep he deployed, and his opponent did the same exact thing. Okay. And so the first one was a draw. So then I was thinking, okay, this is the second time around. People are going to change their approach. Yep. I bet people are going to start with 2 sheep, not just 1. So I decided to start with 3 on my match, and I won the first match 3-2, and I nearly like threw my computer. I was so pumped. But then I had to figure it out. But sure enough, a few rounds into it, the guy just started deploying way too many sheep, and I just like held all mine back and kind of let him deplete himself. And then I swept it for a victory. So that was definitely the most exciting moment of the weekend. But I think overall, I loved the games, and first of all, I tweeted last night. I tweeted a poll, as it was like, which is your favorite Wolf game, peak game, and it's a very, very healthy balance of all 3 games. Like, they're all kind of neck and neck. So that's just really encouraging to see that the community loves the games, and honestly, it's pretty even split in which games they like. I think that's really important. So Shep, man, hats off to the team. What they built and designed is really, really strong. I think what I'm most excited about is way beyond that. It's like it's not about the mini games. the mini games almost are a distraction from the real game that's being played out and that's going to play out. That's what I'm most excited about.
Yeah, which is in your mind breeding.
Yeah, and like I'm gonna call it like World War III. Like I alluded to it earlier, but you know, like we're gonna see alliances form in the game. Like you may see these guys that have certain aspects of the economy that they own, like Water and Stone with Corey and Seed. We already know some of this. Steezy, he's a Chops Maxi, but they are going to use the economy to try to attack each other. We are going to have all out World War III on our hands in Wolf Game. Now, the cool part is in your shoes, you're like, oh, I'm not a whale. I don't know what to do with that. I can't profit from it. Let's talk about the actual World War II that happened. At the end of that, would you rather, have been investing money into Germany or the United States or Great Britain or Japan? Like the way you play the farm game and kind of like where you align yourself can have significant impact on how well your bag does. Okay. So like if so and so, Alpha over here, Alpha 8, if he is positioning himself in the game to go after a certain market on the farm and you position yourself in that same spot, if he pisses everyone off and everyone starts coming after him and they're trying to destroy his in-game economy, that is not going to be good for your bag. Okay, so this is where the social aspect of the game is really starting to come into play. This is where I get really excited about is those dynamics. So to me, you like having a healthy balance is going to be really important to me. We talked about on the last podcast, we talked about backing yourself into a corner. You do not want to do that in this game with how it's being played out. And I believe a strong way to give yourself optionality and to kind of protect yourself against that is to breed, because these different whales that are playing this game, they're going to want certain things maybe different from one another. Like one may try to go after certain resources or control certain areas of the map or something like that, but the one thing they all of them want peak credits, all of them want energy. They're all going to be breeding. They're going to be sabotaging one another to try to hurt the other one's breeding progress, but they're all going to breed and they're all going to need chops. So if you're a sheep owner, first of all, there's never been more incentive than we have currently to actually start breeding if you haven't already. Because when the peak credits dry up and there is a deficit, they're going to be coming for your barns. They're going to be breeding wolves. They're going to want chops. And that's where the game, I think, is going to really start to pick up on the farm. The hatred that these guys have for each other, like the competitiveness and when it comes out in the game, it's going to come out in the game. It's going to come out in the game. Yes.
The leaderboard.
Dude.
How much money can you spend?
Oh God. Like the entertainment value of where this is going is just, it's undeniable. It is going to be the most epic thing in crypto. The NFT space does not know what's coming. They do not know, but Wolf Game community members know exactly what's coming. Like Wolf Game is going to take shit over. Yeah.
Yep.
This is going to be so much fun.
I would agree. And again, the side bets that go on, it's going to get crazy. And that's what Shep kind of wants, right? I mean, It's like, I think it's a perfect storm. And we just got to continue to hold tight and continue to onboard people. And I think it will be natural. But like you had mentioned, now is the time to really keep your head down, stay in your lane, fly under the radar, and take advantage of this while others are consumed by the peak. Yep. And that's kind of like why I'm like, dude, I need to start freaking breeding. I need to get another sheep too, because I only have one. I only have one G0 sheep. Dude, I'm so illiquid right now. I'm like, fuck. I'm like, do I put in more money? And I'm like, I don't know, dude. I mean, like my conviction is so high, but it's also in the riskiest class. you
Yeah.
know?
I know, I totally get it. It's we have to like check ourselves. But I think I think for you, what at least from like based on the interactions I've had with you, it really sounds like you need to pick a direction and go, whether it's trying to find a way to breed your wolf
Yeah, dude.
or trying to
Because
breed the
I'm just
sheep.
looting. I'm just
Yeah.
looting.
Yeah. That's not, you're not like, if you spend your energy more wisely, you can create your own flywheel in this game. Okay.
Yeah.
Like the way you spend your energy is really important. You should not be collecting with a Gen Zero sheep. If you are collecting with a Gen Zero sheep,
Yeah, I've been
you are
continually doing
wasting
it.
its energy. So like there's things like that. But I was gonna say the other
But think
thing
about
is
think about the on the wolf end too. Like
yeah.
so
Oh yeah.
I'm my A7, granted he's getting about 70% of the loots, which is great. He could be used more strategically because
Yep.
he's a raider. The cool thing is get this. So if I start breeding, somebody raids my barn and I'm like, that motherfucker. They raided the barn, you know? I'm gonna take my A7 and boot their ass. Right?
That is
You know what I
totally
mean?
what I would do if I was in your spot. Like
Yeah.
that's one of the reasons why I wish I had a wolf is because I could
He's
just like
kind of like
get
a
rid of these.
bodyguard. He's
Yeah.
kind of like a
Just park it right outside there.
a farmer on steroids.
Yeah.
When you look at breeding, right? I mean,
Yeah.
I again going back to our last talk, breeding kind of can be intimidating for many. Can you give us a step by step, manual or alpha on your thought process when you are breeding? Obviously you need 2 sheep, doesn't matter whether or not they're G0, G1, you need 250 energy per sheep. You
Yep.
also need how much grass?
2,000 grass
And 2,000 grass total or 2,000 grass each?
total.
Okay. You also need to find a barn, right? That's kind of
Yep.
semi-close, near to your community. So how do you think about things? I mean, we could also look into farmer count. Like, what are
Yep.
your thoughts with that? Because I have to start getting into the mix here, and I just don't want to run into a buzzsaw. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, breeding is always changing, right? So 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, if you were trying to breed a sheep and you wanted to rent a farmer, like a Jane or a Joe, not a Joe, Jane or a Joe, a Jane or a kid, which gives you 2-day protection, would have run for 1,600 to 1,900 wool. Okay. This morning, they're under 1,000. Joes are dirt cheap. Well, the farmer's market has completely collapsed, and that makes breeding a lot easier. Okay. So if you want to start breeding, now is a really good time to do it for 2 reasons. The farmer rentals are down, and the farm in general, like wolves are not attacking. They're all focused on peak, and they're all saving their energy, and they're distracted with that. It really goes, if you go back to I think it's the full game promo where it's got like Corey's wolf coming on the wave and all this stuff, and then the wolves are fighting, and then I don't remember who it is, maybe JMO's wolf or something that like points to the sky. He's like, hey guys, he's like basically saying, hey, stop fighting over this stupid sheep in this barn. Like, let's go to the peak. There's a reason for that, right? Like this peak season is going to be so damn entertaining. They're not going to give crap about who's in the barns. So if you're going to start breeding, now is the time to do it. I firmly believe that. The overall though, like from like a framework standpoint, I think the first thing to do is start with one breeding pair. Like keep it simple. Don't try to start breeding with a bunch of different sheep at once, because you're not going to learn as much. Like if any, you're going to take on a lot more risk, and you're probably not going to learn as much as starting with a smaller portion. So maybe if you have 1 breeding pair or 2 breeding pairs, I have 4. Well, I have 5 breeding sheep, and I recharge 1 while the other 4 are breeding. And I've kind of got them all spread out on this recharge schedule to where I can constantly be breeding or recharging. But that's
Now,
that's my approach.
yeah. Now looking into energy of that sheep, you need 250 energy per sheep.
Yep.
Is there a energy max that you're looking at when you're down to like because I think I have one sheep right now that's at, say, 400 energy. Is there a point where you're like, okay, now's the best point to put them in that's over 250, or is it just anything over 250?
Anything over 250. I think depending on your situation, you may want to pivot a little bit. So, like a good example is this: I got broken into last week or 2 weeks ago or something like that. My barn got broken into, and my breeding schedule and my recharging schedule, I didn't have that factored in. So then I was like, well, damn it! Like I've got my one sheep I was going to use for my next breed isn't ready yet, and I've got these two sheep I can't actually breed with them because I need just a little bit more energy on one of the sheep. So I basically I hopped over to the community right next to me, and I was able to snag. There were two jug houses that were pretty good deals, and I was able to use that same sheep and get four different jugs in about 48 hours because I was able to hop between both of them, and then moved back over and jumped back in the barn. So
What's your definition of good deal for jug?
I look for if I can get the wool cost per energy under 10, I'm happy with that. Um, I will say though, if you
What do you,
look,
I'm sorry to interrupt. What do you mean by that? Can you elaborate the wool
yeah,
cost?
so like if you pay 500 wool and the jug is only worth, let's say it's worth 38 energy, you're going to take the 500 and divide it by 38, and it's going to give you a number, and it's going to be like, I don't know, like probably like 11 or 12 or something like that. That number, 11 or 12, that's how much wool you're paying for each piece of energy that's in that jug. Okay, so when I want to recharge my sheep, all I care about is that number. That is my KPI, key performance indicator. Like,
Yeah.
all I care about is how efficiently I'm recharging these sheep. And it may even make sense, if you're looking on wolfgame.page, you can see all the jug houses. It may make sense to hop over to another community. And yeah, you got to pay the wool to get over there and the wool to get back.
And the
But
energy.
yeah, and the energy. But if you do the math, it might actually make sense in that scenario. So there's a lot of factors at play, right? But the main thing there is I am always trying to get the best deal on jugs that I possibly can.
How often do you reach out individually to jug house owners,
Uh,
and try to negotiate a little bit, right?
I did that last month with two different owners and worked out a deal with them. I was like, hey, I see you got a jug house.
I see you
Um,
got some nice jugs.
yeah, you got some nice jugs there, man. Um, and yeah, I just reached out to them and was like, hey, I've got X amount of sheep that I'm trying to recharge. If you want, I wasn't sure if you wanted to rent out your jug house or if you're wanting to use it. And they were like, oh yeah, like you can use it, sure. And I kind of like named a price, and they were like, okay. So, and then they set it for me, and I moved my sheep over there, and I started using it. Um, so yeah, it was really surprising to me actually how easy it was. Like I said, with one of them, I had multiple jug houses in the same community that no one was using. And I was literally hopping around with my sheep, and I was charging those things up like really fast because I was the only one using the jugs. And it's because I was reaching out to people, but it's that's
You
just,
have
yeah.
to be active,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
You got it, and that's what I love about this game. You could be a hustler,
Yep.
right? And you could be that entrepreneur and just kind of sticking and moving. I love
Yep.
that. So that's great. Okay, so sorry to interrupt you on that, but you went from looking for under 10 as a good deal.
Yeah. A good thing to do is kind of like start simple and don't start out with complexity, but start simple. Get like maybe two breeds in, and you're going to start to get a feel for, okay, if you're monitoring your community, so you're kind of checking every day to see how many wolves are in your community, take a little snapshot so that you can check it against the previous day to see if new wolves came in or not. That's a big indicator of how much of how safe you are. But then also pay attention to the farmers market, because that thing changes a lot. It's very volatile. Like in the last 3 weeks, it's been all over the place. But if there's a cheap farmer and it's giving you 2-day protection, like to me, I think that's a smart decision right now in the game, because I think where the peak, what we've learned from peak, where the game is going, kind of everything we've already talked about in the last 30 minutes or so, breeding is going to get harder. I would not be surprised if in the future the only way you can possibly breed is if you have farmers to a certain point. Obviously, they're not going to be attacking you 10 minutes into your breeding session. But like the whole idea of getting to a 750 sheep without protection, like that may be something that's next to impossible unless you have enough farmers. So it all, like I said, it all goes back to chops and the demand for the chops to breed so that these wolves can produce these peak credits so they can climb the leaderboard. Like that is the game loop, and it is a flywheel that like Shep designed wolf game in this beautiful like circular manner.
Isn't it? It's similar to a rondel. Have you heard the term rondel?
No, maybe, but I don't know the term.
Yeah, I mean it's very, very interesting. Rondel is that circular piece in a just a game board, right? But then if you look at it from like just like a bird's eye view on what it actually is, I think it just is a perfect balance where everything kind of comes full circle, in which we spoke a little bit about during our last interview. So I just, the term rondel kind of sticks out. I may be using that different or wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, gamers.
Yeah, it's funny. Like you mentioned balance there. Like when we started to see where peak is going over the weekend, I couldn't help but think back about our conversation about balance, because Shep is he's designing a software like peak, not just peak, but the whole wolf game is a software that is going to run itself, and we are going to govern it with wool. And the more people that come into wolf game and into the ecosystem, the software has to be able to scale with balance, and it can't get out of whack. If it does, Shep said he'll intervene and he'll help balance it. So like maybe it's not foolproof, but the point is that balance across our entire ecosystem. Okay, the balance of all of the mini games, all of the risk, the supply and the demand of these peak credits, the supply and the demand of chops, all of it is very balanced, and that's on purpose, because you can't have 100,000 people come into a game quickly without that balance, because it won't scale. It would be like I don't know, it would be like a train going off the rails, right? Like it just like it would crash and burn once it got to a certain scale point. So it's really beautiful the way he's done it. But yeah, dude, it's crazy where we're going. I can't be bullish enough. I'm so excited. It's funny. One note, actually, I've been kind of like keeping an eye out for some FUD. This is not FUD, but one of the arguments that's come up in Discord has been like this, 5%, like it's too high, right? Like they're not going to play these mini games. We need it lower so more people will play the mini games. I'm telling you, when the leaderboard comes out, these guys are not going to give a damn about a 5% wool burn on a little mini game. Like they do not care about that. They will not care about. The only thing they will care about is the leaderboard and the size of their ego. It is going to be absolutely insane, and they are going to be flinging wool all over the place. We're going to be burning like there's no tomorrow, and no one's going to be worried about a 5% burn. Once it gets to the point where we need to lower that, Shep will trigger a revote, and he'll give us options within a range that's safe. Like we don't need to be worried about 5%. Right. So like, I don't know. I'm bullish. I'm bullish, and I'm bullish on Shep. He knows what the hell he's doing.
Well, there's certain people that no matter how good a product is, they'll always try to find where there's fault, and it's just super frustrating, right? It just brings down the whole vibe. Like we're talking about beta games that are coming out that are unbelievable what they've accomplished, and they're fun. Obviously, there's going to be some, errors, there's going to be some things and hurdles that we have to get over. But it doesn't do any good to bring up FUD. And then people go, well, I'm just being cautious. It's like, dude, just shut up. You know what I mean? Like, get excited, create some fun content, bring some people in. How many people have you onboarded? You know what I mean? Like, that's essentially the way I look at it. So going back to when you were, so back to breeding, are you just only looking at level 3 barns? I don't want you to feel like you're like, dude, you know what I mean? Like, you're going to be like, dude, I'm going to have to start charging for this. You know what I mean? But like, there is such thing as too much alpha. I guess, you can make an argument either way. So I don't want you to feel like, oh man, I got to give up, my strategy or what's going on,
There's a few things at play when it comes to barn selection. One is the price you're paying, okay, for the defense level. Okay, so just like we talked about earlier, I care about how much wool I'm paying for each unit of energy in a jug. I care about how much wool I'm paying for each unit of protection in a barn. Okay, so different barn levels provide different levels of protection, in that if a wolf comes into a community, and let's say there's 5 barns, there's 2 level 1 barns, a level 2 barn, and 2 level 3 barns. He is going to be more inclined to attack the level 1 barns because it requires a lot less energy. Now, some of these smarter wolves, they're doing their homework, they've got tools, they're going after a specific barn, and they've already made their choice. So in from that angle, you're screwed, right? But I don't think it's all a wash. Like, I still think that being in a higher level barn is going to protect you, simply because it requires more energy. And that means that there's not as many wolves that can attack you, right? So like the level barn I'm in, let's say it's a level 3, and it's a defense 4 community, like that wolf has to spend like, I can't remember how many it is. It's something crazy, like almost 700, maybe.
Oh yeah, that was me.
700 energy.
That was me.
Sorry.
That was me.
So
it's all good.
No, but like, you get the point, right? If you have the right barn selection, there are only so many wolves that have that much energy that would be able to attack you. If you do a level 3 barn, you're pretty much guaranteeing you that none of the A5s are going to attack you, just because they don't have enough energy, right? So playing the game that way is kind of, there's some strategy there. The size matters, right?
Yeah. Size matters. But also less time too, right?
Yes.
That's very important.
Yeah, that's another big factor for me, is the difference between a level 1 and a level 2, especially. Like, I wouldn't even consider breeding in a level 1 barn. I won't even do it. I am only looking at level 2s and level 3s, and I prefer level 3s.
And what's the time frame on those? 30 days?
30 days and 27 days, yeah.
And that 3-day difference is huge.
Yep, yeah.
So at what point typically should one look at adding a farmer into the mix?
Yeah, so I think when we've already been seeing that peak game is sort of, it's slowing down the barn raids a good bit right now. So that actually means farmers aren't as needed, which honestly, that might be why the farmers market rental rates are just dropping like a rock, is because people just aren't using them, because they either feel free to breed or they stopped breeding because they think they want to use their energy for credits instead. But to me, I don't know, I'm kind of looking at the overall gameplay and I'm saying, if I'm paying wool for a farmer, I try to do that sparingly, and I try to save those moments for when I feel like I'm at most risk. Okay. So you have to pay attention to the big picture and sort of get a feel for how risky it is to breed, because the riskiness of breeding, it goes up and down over time. It's always an ebb and flow, right? And so if you can get a good feel for the market, that's where you're going to be wanting to add those farmers. I that's one way to do it. Another way is just to have the same exact process every time and kind of have a more linear approach to your breeding, where I'm going to start adding farmers at this point, and then I'm going to space them out like this, and then I'm going to get to this point and I'm going to pull the sheep. And it's like an assembly line.
Clockwork.
Yeah. I started with that strategy, and what I don't like about that strategy is it feels very predictable. If another player sniffs onto that, like if they're able to sniff out the fact that I am following a very strict schedule, that might not play into my favor. So
yeah, I think it could possibly get down to that point later on in the game.
Yeah,
which you talked about when it's harder to breed. Getting into the nitty gritty details of that, I don't think a lot of people, unless there was a target on your back and you like slept with one of the community members' wives or something, somehow I don't see you doing that.
No, that will not happen.
You seem like a good guy.
Oh man, I was gonna say the other thing on farmers, the higher level barn you're in, the more effective your farmer is. Okay, because 2 days of protection on a level 1 barn is only worth, I don't even know how much energy that's worth. Let's just say it's worth 50 energy. But 2 days of protection on a level 3 barn is worth 80 energy. It's worth a lot more energy. So the effectiveness of your farmers changes depending on what type of barn you're in. And another side note there, when levels 4, 5, and 6 get released, farmers are just going to get more valuable. Okay, because a 2-day protection on a higher level barn.
It's that rondel.
Exactly. Farmers, as the game matures and grows, farmers become more valuable, not only because there's more people coming to the game fighting over the same amount of fixed farmers, but the farmers themselves have more breeding coverage. Okay, so if you don't have farmers, now is the time to add them, because it's going to be a lot harder later. You don't want to be figuring that out in another 2 years.
How many farmers would you say is a healthy number to have?
I think
for one process.
My goal was to get to like 10 farmers to cover enough of my breeding. It really depends on how much breeding you want to do, right? So those things kind of go hand in hand. How much breeding do you want to do? Okay, that's going to dictate, really how many farmers you need. So I prefer to have 5 farmers per breeding pair. It's not an exact science. It's just based on the breeding experience that I've had over the last few months. That's kind of like a number that I've set for myself. It's like, okay, I'd like to get to that point. The problem is right now I only have 4 farmers. So, and I've got 2 breeding pairs. But I have accepted the strategy of going heavily into wool, and I'm going to let the game kind of come to me on that. And so as wool outperforms everything else, I'll be able to kind of shift out of wool and into some other game pieces so I can keep breeding if I need to.
Yeah, that's a good point. And last week you spoke about pouches and being able to use your drip to rent these farmers if it comes down to it, right?
Yep.
Because there's that difference between owning and renting. And would it make sense to, if you have 4 farmers that you own, to rent out that last one if you need it, right?
Yeah. And I think it is really smart if you do own farmers. Like if I owned farmers, I would almost at least rent them out entirely and then use that and rent for other farmers. So like I've got my 4 farmers. I'm not going to use them on myself because I want the optionality of renting the farmer exactly when I need it. The timing of the farmers when it comes to breeding is really important. Okay. Because you might have a gap in your breed where, you don't have a farmer available for 3 more days, and that's a pretty big gap. Like you may not want to be farmerless, protectionless on your breed for 3 days. So if you rent them out, then you use that wool to then rent a farmer when you need it. It's kind of like, it's kind of a wash, if that makes sense. You're just kind of shuffling things around a little bit.
Yeah. 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 I have a diesel that I love that's behind me. Where are you, Diesel? Pop up. Oh, it was the wolf. All right. That would have been
It's
cool.
not disappointing. It's not disappointing at all.
But he's literally just chilling out in my wallet, and I'm like, he's just not doing anything.
Yeah.
So I was looking at renting him out, and I'm like, it just seems so minuscule, the wool rental, and then to not have him for another 32 days, because it might take him a couple days to rent, and then you got to factor in 30 days of cool down, right?
Yeah. Yep.
There he is. There's that farmer. There's that cool ass farmer. He's a badass. But yes, super interesting. I haven't really delved down the jug. I haven't placed my face into the jug, the jugs yet. Castorino was very generous, and he just let me use a jug. He was like, "Here, dude, I'm going to give you this jug for my wolf," which was really cool. But I'm sure it'll come back to him down the road. But yeah, so with the jugs, just to go in briefly, I literally haven't delved down them at all. So what would you like? Is there alpha right now in bathing, or just getting these jugs and just because it's immediate energy, right?
I will say this: I haven't looked at the bathhouse rates in several days, so things may have changed. But last week, there's not enough demand for jugs, and the jug prices were a good bit lower, like from like an efficiency standpoint, than bathhouses. So I've been kind of going for jugs. Now that I'm saying this on this podcast, it may the cat's out of the bag, if you will. So it may not be lasting very long, but I will say jugs have been kind of a nice sweet spot because it fills you up quickly. And there's been certain communities where you can kind of like hop around to the different jug houses. Just, you got to look at their timers and then set an alarm and be ready to go. But if you do that, like you can charge up a lot faster than a traditional bathhouse and a lot cheaper than doing like, an instant swap or something like that.
Crazy, man. So many different ways to play this game. If you're not playing it, I don't understand your mind. You can only lead a horse to water. That's it.
Right. I will say one thing that's really encouraging. I have had 2 players like within my sphere of wolf game that kind of went dormant, weren't really playing the game. They still paid attention to like, kind of what was happening like on like a release schedule and stuff like that, but they weren't really paying or playing the game. And this last weekend has completely changed their minds, and they are fully engaged and they are playing. Write this down. There are so many wolf gamers that went quiet and got busy with life, got busy with work, got busy with real responsibilities, and they didn't make wolf game a priority, but they're still paying attention, and this has their eye. Like there's no denying that, and that is about the most bullish thing that we could possibly see. To see the core community that's already been engaged this whole time grow, because people that were close to the community, maybe even owned some assets, they were just kind of disengaged, and Shep has definitely caught their eye. And like I said, that light bulb moment that I had this weekend, everyone's getting that light bulb. Everyone has that light bulb moment. Like it's growing. The awareness is growing. We are bullish. We are so damn bullish.
What would you say to somebody who is a gamer and they're looking at the ecosystem, but they're also wondering, like, their biggest qualm is the fact of like feeling like they're behind the ball, and that the early wolf gamers will have a severe advantage over them. I mean, obviously nobody likes to go into any competition feeling like they have the lower hand, right? So what would you say to them? Is there, what are your thoughts on that?
So one thought, this is a plug for myself, is I am working on a website to basically help those people out. I think one of the big things that is going to be really important is helping people understand the farm. The farm is complex. Like, we know the farm is complex, and the team has been building the complexity. And I think there's a need in the community for content to specifically be designed for helping those people kind of like get up to speed quickly. So I'm working on some content to basically help people understand, okay, at a high level, this is what the game is. Here are different personas of people. We've talked about the entrepreneur. We've talked about the, maybe the gambler that is that has an edge because he's strategic. These different angles, and I'm going to create these sort of like strategy packages, not too granular, but just like, hey, okay, here are some of the pieces that might fit your game. And then here's a direction that you could go in. So my goal is to basically help people kind of pick a direction and then go in it. That's coming. But I would say, from what I would say to them right now is, yes, people that were here before you and have been playing have an advantage. I'm not denying that. But the seismic scale that Wolf Game is going, even if you come onto Wolf Game this December, you are still so early. Like, people don't think about it that way, right? It's easy to think about, oh, I'm too late. I had the same thing. I said the same thing about Bitcoin in 2017. I said, I'm too late to Bitcoin. I think I'll do this XRP thing, right? And I invested in Ripple. But you got to get rid of the I'm too late mentality. When you look at Wolf Game and you look at how it is set to scale, how many players can come into this game, you may come in right now and you'll feel you're in a disadvantage, but you'll be surprised at how quickly this thing can scale. And then 3 months later, there's new people coming into the game and they're like, oh, damn it. Like, I'm so behind that guy over there. And what they don't realize is that guy over there was literally in their shoes 3 months ago saying the exact same thing. So I think that's some perspective that people can have. But the other thing is, understanding how the ecosystem goes up together. The whole Wolf Game ecosystem rises and falls with wool. Wool sets the pace, and everything's going to go up and down with it. And people don't realize how high this thing's going to fly. So yeah, you may feel like you're late, but I'm sorry, if you're buying wool under a penny, you're not late. Like, you are certainly not late. And there is plenty of opportunity in this game to breed, to trade resources, to collect. Pick your strategy. If you want to play passive and you just want to collect wool from all this land, as people are using jugs, as that picks up, or C0, pick a direction in the game, understand how much time you want to put in, and then kind of strategize around that and kind of position yourself accordingly.
I love that. You also have to think about asset prices,
where
everything is. I mean, you talked about wool under 1 cent. You're looking at wolves under, I think you can probably negotiate a wolf under 1 ETH, which is a joke.
Yeah. Yep.
Sheep at 0.13. There's just so many opportunities. So you are not late.
Yep.
Just to put it into perspective, like, I was buying G0 sheep when they were like 1.4, 1.5 ETH.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I think they're going to go back up to 3 or 4. So I'm going to get them. And they're down to 0.13. So you could be like, oh, there's just so many different angles to get on board, and you're certainly not late to the party.